How's it going?
Yeah, I sent in those mental game questions. I really wanted to hear your thoughts on them. So the first question, how to stay focused, how to stay in the zone during long sessions. I know I'm probably not the only one that can struggle with that at times. Like you get to the casino, you're in the zone, you're playing, and then maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours go by. You haven't been involved in a hand, kind of card dead, and
Okay.
I find myself daydreaming. Obviously, always want to stay locked in. So I'm wondering, tips and how you stay focused during long sessions.
How do I stay focused during long sessions? Interesting question. And then you have a question about, didn't you also have a question about game selection too, right? If I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's one of these things where, I mean, we're not robots, right? So the reality of it is that everyone's got like a phone, right? Sort of like attached to their hip now with electronics and stuff. And in a cash game, when you feel, I think, somewhat comfortable with your player pool, it's very, very easy to sort of go on autopilot, I would say.
Hmm.
And I think it's something that everyone does. But I'll give you a little bit of an unorthodox answer. If you're fairly familiar with your player pool and you're playing the same people over and over again, it's actually not that big of a deal. And it even I can even highlight this in Limit when I play like a lot of Limit '08 type of stuff, where I think it will really nip you in the bud. And if you're playing mid to low stakes, you're not constantly playing with the same players. When you're playing with new people or people that you are not familiar with, you need to pay attention. I made a checklist a few weeks ago for someone who asked me this question on the Crush Live Poker podcast about like what do I look for at the table. You need to pay attention to how these people play and more specifically how they play showdowns because you don't have the luxury of like when I'm commentating in a poker live stream of being able to see the hands. I always say that if for every hour I commentate on live stream hands, it's almost like the equivalent of 20 hours worth of experience because I can see everyone's hands. This is how Dave Tuckman and I got instantly to be like two of the best 510 players back in 2005 without even playing a hand because we could see what all the good players did and what all the bad players were doing based upon the fact that we could see the cards. Now, when you're playing, you don't really have that luxury, but the
Hmm.
most important thing I think to remember is pay attention to showdowns amongst people that you don't know well. And you can learn so much by seeing somebody's showdown in the sense of what hands they are supposed to be playing pre-flop from what positions and how much they're deviating. I always go back to this old anecdote about how I made this huge fold against this unknown guy at Commerce where I folded bottom two and he was the pre-flop raiser and the board came out like 8 9 10 and I had 8 9 and he three bet me all in like a 300 big blind pot and I raised folded 8 9 and he had aces. He overplayed aces. Like I folded, and he showed me like good fold, and he turned over aces. And then a couple of rounds later, I saw this guy limp in from under the gun with Jack three suited, and then it got to showdown, and I was like, wow, like if I had literally seen that happen one round before, I never in a million years would have ever folded 8 9 to this guy post flop. And so, if there would be one thing, the most important thing I think to pay attention to is when you see somebody showdown, relate to what position they're playing and how far they are deviating from what they are supposed to play in a given scenario. Now, you can see a guy like call a raise in the cutoff with Queen Jack offsuit. Maybe that's not 100% optimal, but it's not like insanely bad. Or King Queen offsuit might be a better example. But when a guy like limps in with 6 9 suited, or when a guy, this is another very, very easy thing to pick up on, right, is cold calls three bets from in between, which you're really never really supposed to do. You can almost tag people as good and bad players. This is a shortcut, by the way, by what they play pre-flop. It's not 100% like, whether or not someone's going to be good or bad based upon the stuff that they play pre-flop, but at least that's a start. It's something that you can really grasp at. And it was something that I was doing during the main event. I just did a 4-part series on the podcast covering all my main event hands, and that was something that I was looking for because I was getting moved from table to table, and I didn't know most of the players. So I'm always looking at what are they showing down. Tournaments a little bit different because people sort of know, they're short. They don't get to play as loose. But if that's the one thing that you can zone in on, that's what you can really zone in on. I mean, it's easy for me to say, don't look at your phone. Don't play around the internet. Yeah, that's all great. I just don't know if that's necessarily the reality of it. I think that the most important things that you can look at is when a guy turns over their hand on the river looking at the position they're in and seeing how far they're deviating from what they should be playing pre-flop.
Yeah, it's really good. A lot.
And what was this? What was
Um,
your other question?
so I kind of had like it was kind of three questions all, but so the second question was knowing when to walk. I know that I'm playing my best, and knowing when to stay and try and and stay and fight. I noticed that myself. I have a lot of come from behind wins. I don't know if other people have that, but I noticed that I personally have a lot of come from behind wins. And I also noticed that I don't like accept a loss. I try and stay and fight. I think that might be why I have a lot of come from behind wins, but I guess knowing when to walk and know I'm not playing my best,
Yeah.
and
So
knowing when to stay.
got it, Miles. So your connection is a little bit shoddy. So I'm going to repeat the question for everybody out there because we'll probably use this for a video. I think Miles' question is like how do I know when I should extend my sessions, when I should be chasing my losses, when I should walk away, and it's. I'll give you a math answer that I think makes a whole lot of sense. I have always said that most people do go about this the wrong way, where they will play their longest sessions when they're losing, they're chasing their losses, and that's the exact opposite of what you want to do. The times that I cut my sessions short, especially when I was playing full time, was actually when I was losing. And there's a number of reasons for that. The main reason, because I played in a game that had a high cap, so I was always topping off. The main reason for me was image. I had a really shitty image, which didn't allow you to win a lot of non-showdown pots. And there's an adjustment that you can make if you're losing during a session, which is just geared towards more value betting and less bluffing, because people just don't tend to believe you. Now, a lot of money, not all, but I mean a lot of money in Hold'em though, can be made with non-showdown. So both people are missing. So if you never have the ability to bluff, it definitely hurts you, even though at the smaller stakes, the game is more value oriented. But as a direct sort of math answer to that, a lot of people that are watching this, if they play in capped buy-in games, like if you play in a $5 blind game with a 500 cap, or you play in a 2-3 game with a $300 cap, your win rate is going to go up the more money that you have on the table. Now, it's not always the case, but if you can kind of picture, there was a great example of this. I don't know if this game still goes at Hollywood Park in Los Angeles. I think it does. It's a half PLO, half PLO 8 game. And the max buy-in's 300. There's two tables. There's a must move to the main. When you get to the main, if you're playing for 8 to 10 hours, because people are constantly getting in all the time, at the main, you'll see people with thousands of dollars in their stack, even though it's a $300 cap buy-in. So if you can get as deep with those people, obviously your win rate is going to go up and up and up. So if you're having a winning session, that will in a capped game, that's normally going to dictate that you're going to have more money in front of you. So you're going to be able to be deeper, effective with the other stacks, with the other bad players at that level, which means that you're going to be able to, your hourly is going to go up. Like if you have 300 in front of you in a 2-3 game versus if you have 1500 effective with a bunch of other deeper stacks in a 2-3 game, your hourly, if you're a winning player, is going to go up when you have more money in front of you. So not only is it for image purposes, like a godlike image where people want to stay away from you, that it sort of helps your non-showdown wins, but the sheer fact that you get to play deeper in a longer session because you've won, because you can go beyond that cap, means that your hourly is going to be longer. And I know sometimes it's hard for some people. They want to chase their losses, but you definitely want to look at it as one long session. And I personally felt like when I was losing, I wasn't playing my best. Now, I had the luxury of knowing that I was going to be able to come the next day and play full time. Some people don't have that luxury. But to really boil it down, I think the right way to approach how long you're going to play in a session at the table is based upon whether you're winning or you're losing. And you want to pick the sessions where you're winning and extend those sessions outward longer, especially if other bad players have a lot of chips in front of you. Now there can be obviously situations where everyone's short and the game turns to hell, and that's a time to leave. But what you don't want to do is continue to get stacked and then only be able to buy in for 300, and now you're playing splashy, trying to get involved. You have a shitty image. That's a recipe for a big time losing session. So I would try to concentrate on the times, if you have certain sessions where you want to extend when you play, Don't get up when you're winning and be like, I'm going to hit and run, or, oh, I booked a $2,000 win. I want my record. I'm just going to get up and leave. Unless there's someone else that's giving you fits in position because they're as deep with you. I mean, that's once in a great while. You might want to pick up because you're at a huge disadvantage, but that's once in a great while. Most of the time, you want to extend the sessions when you're winning. You don't want to chase your losses. The best thing you can do is just cut it short when you're losing. Come back another day, have a good winning session, start off your session well, and that's the session that you want to extend. I hope that answered your question, Miles.
Yeah, yeah, that was great. Thank you.
All right, Miles, thank you very much for the call. Bye.